Stranded on a magical island, a powerful sorcerer conjures a storm to bring his enemies to his shore. But for what purpose? Revenge, or something far more profound? Welcome to The Deep Dive, and our journey into one of Shakespeare's most enchanting and final acts, The Tempest.
It really is an amazing play.
Today, we're not just touching the surface, we're diving deep into a play often categorized as a romance, celebrated for its incredible magical elements and its profound themes of reconciliation.
Yeah, it's got that blend of tragedy and comedy, but ultimately ends on a note of, well, hope, mostly.
It's a work that asks big questions about power, forgiveness, and what it truly means to be human.
That's right. Our mission for this deep dive is to truly unpack the core plot, delve into the motivations of its central characters, and, dissect the primary themes that resonate through the play.
Themes like forgiveness, definitely.
Forgiveness, the inherent nature of power, and even the complex, sometimes uncomfortable echoes of colonialism. We're going to explore how The Tempest connects deeply with human nature and the challenges we still grapple with today. It's a story woven with threads of exile, magic, and a grand, meticulously orchestrated plan for resolution that unfolds before our very eyes.
Okay, let's unpack this with the force of the very storm that opens the play. Imagine, if you will, the scene of utter chaos. A terrifying shipwreck.
Right off the bat.
The stage directions are terse but impactful. A tempestuous noise of thunder and lightning heard. You're immediately plunged into this maelstrom, feeling the raw human fear and confusion among the mariners and nobles as their ship is violently tossed by this incredible unnatural storm.
That's pure panic.
The bosun, one of the first voices we hear, is absolutely losing his patience, not with the storm itself, but with the bumbling nobles getting in the way.
Yeah, telling them to get below deck.
Exactly, shouting, "All lost! To prayers, all lost!" You can almost feel the spray, the panic, the desperate struggle for survival. It's a masterclass in opening a play with immediate visceral impact.
It truly is a powerful opening that immediately thrusts you into peril. What's so fascinating here is that this isn't some random act of nature, a capricious sea.
No, not at all.
We quickly discover that this entire tempest has been meticulously conjured by Prospero, the powerful sorcerer and the rightful Duke of Milan, precisely to bring his enemies to his isolated island. This sets the stage for everything that follows, revealing Prospero's hand as the ultimate orchestrator, the hidden director of this unfolding drama.
He's pulling all the strings from the very beginning.
Every creak of the ship, every flash of lightning is part of his elaborate design.
And what an elaborate orchestration it is. To truly grasp why he's gone to such lengths, why he would conjure such a terrifying storm, we have to rewind to Prospero's past, his time as the Duke of Milan.
Right, the backstory is crucial.
He was a man, we learn, deeply, almost obsessively immersed in secret studies and the liberal arts.
Magic, basically.
Pretty much. He tells his daughter Miranda that his library was his dukedom large enough. He truly valued his books, his intellectual pursuits, his magical knowledge, above the practical responsibilities of governing.
Which is, maybe not the best quality in a ruler.
Can you imagine a leader today who would prioritize their personal research and learning above all else, almost to the point of neglecting their administrative duties?
It's an intriguing question about priorities, isn't it? And this is precisely where the perfidy, the ultimate betrayal, comes in.
Yeah, the betrayal.
Because Prospero was so engrossed in his intellectual pursuits, he essentially handed over the day-to-day management of his state to his younger brother, Antonio.
Big mistake.
Huge. And Antonio, seeing an opportunity, seized power by manipulating the state. He formed a treacherous alliance with the King of Naples, Alonso.
Another key player who ends up on the island.
Exactly. Antonio agreed to pay annual tribute and subject Milan's coronet to Naples' crown, all to usurp Prospero's rightful place. It's a classic, agonizing tale of ambition and betrayal within the family.
It echoes so many of Shakespeare's other plays, but here it feels like the setup for something different, not just straight tragedy.
Precisely. It sets the stage for this intricate plan of restoration and reconciliation.
It's heartbreaking, really, to think your own brother would do that. Prospero and his infant daughter Miranda were then forced into exile.
Just cast out.
Set adrift in a rotten, barely seaworthy boat. It's a harrowing image, two souls cast out onto the open ocean. But thankfully, they weren't entirely alone in their despair.
Ah, yes, Gonzalo.
Gonzalo, an old, kind lord, secretly provided them with invaluable provisions. Food, fresh water, and most crucially for Prospero, books from his cherished library.
That act of kindness by Gonzalo is absolutely pivotal. It's what allows Prospero to survive, obviously, but also to continue his studies.
Ready to hone his art.
To deepen his understanding of the very art that will eventually enable him to enact his long-term plan. He's been patiently waiting for just the right moment, for fate to align in his favor.
12 years, right.
12 long years. As he tells Miranda, the very minute bids thee open ear. This isn't a spontaneous act of vengeance. It's a culmination of years of meticulous planning, study, and waiting for the stars, or rather the ship, to align.
And this brings us to Miranda, Prospero's daughter. Her life on the island has been incredibly sheltered, profoundly shaping her worldview.
Utterly isolated.
She's seen only her father and, as we'll discuss, Caliban. This isolation, this utter lack of external human contact, leads to a profound naivete and a remarkable innocence.
And Prospero definitely cultivates that.
He maintains significant control over her perceptions, even to the point of magically putting her to sleep after recounting his difficult backstory.
Yeah, that's a bit unsettling, isn't it?
He does this so he can speak freely with his spirit servant, Ariel, without Miranda being privy to all the details. Miranda, upon waking, believes that the strangeness of your story put heaviness in me, not realizing her father's direct magical influence.
It's a subtle but powerful demonstration of Prospero's control, isn't it?
Yeah.
He carefully manages her understanding of their past, limiting her exposure to the true nature of their exile and the harsh realities of the world outside their island.
Is it purely for protection, you think? Or is there an element of paternal manipulation at play?
That's the question, isn't it? This ambiguity is one of the many layers the play invites us to consider. He orchestrates her entire reality, much like he orchestrates the storm.
Absolutely. And central to Prospero's almost omnipotent control and the execution of his magic is Ariel, his primary agent.
Ariel the spirit.
Ariel's own history is quite tragic, revealing another layer of suffering on the island. The delicate spirit was imprisoned for 12 long years by the foul witch Sycorax.
Caliban's mother.
Exactly. Trapped agonizingly within a cloven pine. This was her punishment for refusing Sycorax's earthy and abhorred commands, which Ariel, being a spirit of air and light, found repugnant and against his very nature.
So Prospero arrives on the island, finds Ariel in this torment, and frees him using his powerful art, his magic and knowledge.
Right, so Ariel owes him.
This act establishes their current dynamic. Ariel serves Prospero with the promise of eventual liberty, a promise Prospero has to remind Ariel of, sometimes quite sharply when Ariel gets impatient.
Yeah, he definitely holds that debt over Ariel's head.
Ariel's magical abilities are incredibly diverse and subtle. We see Ariel casting social and defensive spells through music, making him almost like a bard, weaving enchantment not just through grand illusions, but through sounds, whispers, and charms that subtly manipulate the minds and movements of the shipwrecked nobles.
Music is key to Ariel's magic.
Absolutely. Ariel truly functions as an extension of Prospero's will, demonstrating the sheer scope of Prospero's power over both the natural and supernatural elements of the island.
Okay, so we have Prospero, Miranda, Ariel. But here's where it gets really interesting. Moving on to the other key and often contentious inhabitants of this magical island.
Caliban.
Let's turn our attention to Caliban, a character Prospero describes as a freckled whelp, hag-born son of Sycorax, and a devil.
Pretty harsh language.
He certainly aligns with the popular European archetype of the wild man, a human form removed from or untouched by civilization. Yet Shakespeare, as he often does, complicates the simplistic label.
Indeed. While Prospero attempts to dehumanize him, calling him a freckled whelp and a thing of darkness, there are immediate textual clues that invite us to resist a purely negative or one-dimensional view of Caliban.
Like what?
Well, Ariel, for instance, calls him her son when referring to Sycorax, quietly reminding us of his humanity despite Prospero's harsh judgment. It's a very early signal from Shakespeare that we should approach Caliban with more nuance than Prospero allows.
That's a good point. And, it's easy to forget that their early relationship wasn't always one of master and slave or oppressor and oppressed.
Right, there was a time before the incident.
Initially, Prospero and Miranda coexisted happily with Caliban. Prospero taught him language, opening up a new world for him.
Which Caliban later resents.
Yes, famously so.
Yeah.
But before that, Caliban, in turn, generously shared his intimate knowledge of the island. He pointed out water with berries in it, taught them to name the bigger light and the less, showed them fresh springs, brine pits, barren place, and fertile.
It sounds like an almost idyllic, mutually beneficial exchange at first. That period of apparent harmony is absolutely crucial context for understanding Caliban's deep resentment later on. It highlights a relationship that, at one point, seemed symbiotic, built on shared knowledge and mutual discovery before it soured so dramatically. It makes the subsequent transformation into master-slave, colonizer-colonized, even more stark.
And that souring point leads us directly to one of the most controversial and frequently debated incidents in the play. The accusation where Prospero claims Caliban didst seek to violate the honor of my child.
Yeah, this is a really difficult part of the play.
The most common interpretation, and what the text directly implies, is that Caliban attempted rape and shows no remorse. He even expresses that disturbing wish that he had succeeded in peopling else this isle with Calibans.
And Miranda's lines, in many versions, are incredibly harsh towards him because of it.
That is indeed the widely accepted reading, and the lines certainly lead to that conclusion. However,
there are other ways to look at it.
For a curious deep diver like yourself, it's worth noting that some scholars have proposed an alternative interpretation. Now, this view is still fraught, but it attempts to add another layer of complexity.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
This view suggests that Caliban might have tried to push boundaries, perhaps suggesting a sexual relationship that made Miranda deeply uncomfortable or was considered inappropriate by Prospero.
So not necessarily attempted force, but maybe a crossing of lines that Prospero reacted very strongly to.
Exactly. In this interpretation, Prospero, being an incredibly protective father, could be seen as flying off the handle, perhaps convincing Miranda that Caliban's intention was to force himself on her, thereby completely destroying Miranda's image of Caliban as the benign guide she once knew.
That's quite a recontextualization. So Miranda's harsh lines to Caliban, then, wouldn't necessarily stem from the direct trauma of an assault, but rather from the discomfort of seeing someone she used to be close to who she thinks betrayed her trust, possibly amplified by her father's reaction.
Right. And perhaps most fascinatingly, from a historical perspective, it's worth noting that older editions, like the Mogi text, actually moved those lines about the attempted rape from Miranda's mouth to Prospero's.
Seriously, why?
Apparently, they deemed them improper for a young, innocent woman like Miranda to speak, which just highlights the long-standing discomfort and interpretations surrounding this pivotal scene.
Wow. That editorial change speaks volumes about societal views back then.
It really does, precisely. Regardless of the interpretation you lean towards, Caliban's resentment of Prospero is crystal clear. He sees Prospero as an intruder who styes me in this hard rock and keeps him from the rest of the island, which he considers his rightful inheritance from his mother.
The island was his, or his mother's, before Prospero arrived.
And he learned language from Prospero and Miranda, but famously declares his profit on it is, I know how to curse.
Such a powerful line.
It starkly illustrates his profound sense of oppression. His very language, given to him by his oppressor, becomes a tool for defiance. It's a powerful statement about the nature of colonized people appropriating the tools of their colonizers for resistance.
Absolutely. Speaking of marginalized figures, let's broaden our lens and turn our attention to the women in the play who often get overlooked, existing on the periphery of the main action. Sycorax and Claribel.
Right, Sycorax first. Caliban's mother. We only know her through Prospero's descriptions, really.
And he consistently portrays her as a foul witch banished from Argier, which is ancient Algiers, for mischiefs manifold and sorceries terrible.
So our only perspective on her is from her enemy's son's master. Not exactly objective.
Not at all. And it's crucial to recognize that Prospero actively demonizes Sycorax. He constantly reminds Ariel of her cruelty and her dark magic, using it to justify his own control over the island and its inhabitants.
Control justification.
From a critical perspective, particularly a post-colonial one, this portrayal suggests that Sycorax is doubly colonized. Not just as a native dispossessed of her land by Prospero's arrival, but also misrepresented and demonized as a woman and a witch.
Reflecting the misogyny of the era, too.
Definitely. Some scholars even suggest her cursing, which Ariel mentions, represents a kind of third space of resistance.
A third space? What do you mean?
Think of it not as direct rebellion or submission, but a spiritual or linguistic defiance that exists outside the colonizer's imposed framework. A kind of internal or cultural insurgency that resists direct control. It's a fascinating concept that complicates the power dynamics beyond simple victim-oppressor.
Interesting. And what about Claribel, Alonso's daughter? She never even appears on stage.
Exactly. She's another significant example of female marginalization. We only hear about her being married off to the king of Tunis.
Just like a pawn in a political game.
Essentially, yes, a political commodity to strengthen alliances between kingdoms. She has no voice, no agency in this decision, and her own opinion or desires are entirely absent from the play.
It connects directly to that whole patriarchal ideology of Elizabethan England, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Women often seen as the property of their father or husband. Marriages, especially for nobles, were frequently arranged like business contracts for wealth, power, or acclaim.
Love wasn't necessarily the point.
Not the primary one usually. Claribel's absence from the stage just underscores her absolute lack of power or influence in her own life.
It's a stark contrast to Miranda's budding romance, which we'll get to, but first let's introduce some much-needed comic relief, and yet another layer of potential usurpation. The comic interlopers, Trinculo and Stefano.
Ah, the jester and the drunken butler.
These two stumble upon Caliban on the island, and Caliban, thinking Stefano is a god because he carries celestial liquor wine, of course.
Full of booze.
He pledges his allegiance to this new deity, even kissing his foot. It's both ridiculous and a little pathetic.
It is. But this is a pivotal moment, actually, beyond just the surface humor. It demonstrates a clear, almost desperate shift in Caliban's servitude.
How so?
He's so desperate for freedom from Prospero's harsh, educated rule that he's willing to serve these new masters, even if they're drunken buffoons. He sings, "Farewell, master, farewell, farewell, has a new master, get a new man, freedom, high day, freedom."
So he's trading one master for another, basically.
Exactly, highlighting his desire for any new authority figure, no matter how ridiculous, to escape Prospero. It's a pathetic imitation of the freedom he truly craves, showing his lack of a true path to self-governance. It also ironically mirrors the earlier usurpation plot in the main storyline.
Antonio and Sebastian.
Right, reducing the grand schemes of kings to the drunken fantasies of a butler and a jester.
Okay, now let's connect all these threads in part 3. Plots are thickening, love is blossoming amidst the chaos, and the very nature of power is being tested. First, back to the nobleman's conspiracy.
The serious plot.
It continues even after their harrowing shipwreck. King Alonso is absolutely despairing over the presumed death of his son, Ferdinand.
He thinks Ferdinand drowned in the storm. Understandable grief.
And in that very moment of vulnerability, Sebastian, the king's brother, and Antonio, Prospero's treacherous brother, they start plotting again.
You'd think a near-death experience might change them, but no.
Apparently not. They scheme to murder Alonso and Gonzalo, the kind old lord, in their sleep so Sebastian can seize the crown of Naples.
It mirrors Antonio's earlier usurpation of Prospero perfectly. It shows this sinister cycle of ambition and betrayal that just persists.
Power corrupts, right?
It seems to reveal the corrupting nature of power and unchecked desire, how quickly the lessons of peril are forgotten.
But Prospero's watchful eye through Ariel is on them constantly.
Ariel to the rescue.
Ariel intervenes, singing a solemn, eerie song in Gonzalo's ear, a warning to shake off slumber and beware.
Wakes him up just in time.
This magical intervention saves Alonso and Gonzalo from certain death, preserving Prospero's larger, intricate plan for resolution. It's not about letting them all die. It's about controlling their destiny.
Exactly. It's a critical demonstration of Prospero's meticulous control and how he uses his magic not just for revenge, but for the precise manipulation of events to serve his ultimate redemptive purpose.
Which leads us beautifully into the marriage plot.
Ferdinand and Miranda. A stark contrast to the dark plotting we just discussed.
When Ferdinand first arrives on the island, miraculously alive, Miranda is absolutely mesmerized.
Love at first sight, basically.
Well, remember, she's only ever seen her father and Caliban, so when she sees Ferdinand, she calls him a thing divine, genuinely believing he's a spirit or a god.
Which is both endearing and a little heartbreaking in its naivete.
Prospero, however, plays the protective, testing father. He puts Ferdinand through a series of tests, forcing him into seemingly menial labor.
Making him carry logs.
What he calls wooden slavery. He wants to ensure Ferdinand's love for Miranda is genuine, steadfast, and not just infatuation born of novelty. It's a true trial by labor.
And Miranda's empathetic nature, a core part of her character, truly shines through here. She sees Ferdinand's weariness and offers to help him with his arduous task.
Which he refuses, right, being noble.
He does, but this quickly develops into a passionate whirlwind love story, almost instantaneous. Miranda, in an incredibly bold declaration for the era especially given her sheltered upbringing.
What does she say?
She tells Ferdinand, "I am your wife, if you will marry me. If not, I'll die your maid," even offering herself as his servant.
Wow, that's incredibly forward for her. Talk about agency.
It's an astonishing display of agency and directness from a character who has lived in such isolation.
It's remarkably bold, truly. Prospero, watching from a distance, ultimately approves of their union.
He was testing Ferdinand all along.
He sees it not just as a happy match, but as a compensation for his own past wrongs, his exile, and a rich gift to be bestowed upon his enemies, symbolically restoring what was lost.
It's meant to symbolize new beginnings and the restoration of a natural, harmonious order, almost as if this love can heal the old wounds inflicted by betrayal.
But while love is blossoming on one side of the island,
The Caliban is hatching another plot.
fueled by resentment and, well, Stefano's liquor. Drunk with Stefano and Trinculo, he convinces them to kill Prospero. His motivation is clear: to regain control of his island.
But there's a crucial detail he emphasizes to Stefano, something about Prospero's weakness.
Yes, he says, first to possess his books, for without them he's but a sot as I am, nor hath not one spirit to command.
That line is so incredibly telling. It absolutely underscores the direct link between Prospero's power and his knowledge embodied in his books.
Caliban gets it. No books, no magic.
Caliban, despite being labeled a savage, instinctively understands that without his texts, Prospero is vulnerable, reduced to a mere mortal. It forces us to ask, what happens when the gatekeeper of knowledge is also the wielder of power? And what happens when that knowledge is physically vulnerable?
It highlights how intellectual power can be just as potent, if not more so, than physical might.
Definitely. And then, as a grotesque prize for their cooperation, Caliban offers Miranda to Stefano.
Yeah, that part's disturbing.
He says, "She will become thy bed, I warrant, and bring thee forth brave brood." It highlights a really problematic aspect of his character, even as we consider his oppression. He sees her as property to be traded.
Mirroring the very patriarchal system that marginalizes Claribel, it's complex.
And yet, despite this dark plotting, this character Shakespeare created, whom Prospero labels a savage, also showcases a surprising, beautiful, poetic soul.
The "be not afeard" speech.
Exactly. He delivers one of Shakespeare's most famous and haunting speeches. "Be not afeard. The isle is full of noises, sounds, and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not."
It's gorgeous.
He describes how these sounds, these thousand twangling instruments, can give delight, and even when he wakes from dreams of riches, he cries to dream again. This speech, describing the island's enchanting sounds and the vivid dreams they inspire, profoundly humanizes him.
It completely breaks through the caricature of the savage.
It's a testament to Shakespeare's ability to create complex, contradictory characters that resist simple categorization, reminding us that even the most reviled characters possess an inner world of beauty and longing.
Okay, we've set the stage, explored the characters and their complex roles, and seen the various plots unfold. Now we come to part 4. The reckoning, redemption, and the ultimate power of art. Prospero uses his magic to create a stunning masque for Ferdinand and Miranda.
A magical show within the play.
This majestic vision, or masque, as Prospero calls it, is a vanity of mine art. Now, a masque in Shakespeare's time wasn't just a simple play. It was often a lavish, allegorical spectacle put on for royalty.
Full of music, dance, elaborate costumes.
Right. Often designed to flatter and reinforce power through symbolic display. So when Prospero stages one here, it's more than just a magical party trick. It's an act of magical theater.
Designed not only to celebrate Ferdinand and Miranda's union, but also, to show off?
Partly, maybe, but also to reaffirm his control. He is the ultimate director, manipulating reality, literally creating a world for them. This connects deeply to the theme of art versus nature and the transformative, almost deceptive power of illusion itself.
Making us wonder how much of what we see is real and how much is Prospero's masterful stage management.
It's a fleeting moment of beauty, but one that underscores the artifice behind Prospero's power. And then comes the pivotal choice, the moral turning point for Prospero and, arguably, the entire play.
Ariel reports back.
Ariel reports back on the suffering of the shipwrecked nobles. They are brimful of sorrow and dismay. Their affections would become tender if Prospero could only see them in their current state of despair.
They were broken down by his magic.
And this is where Ariel, a non-human spirit, delivers a line that acts as a profound catalyst for Prospero's moral awakening.
What does Ariel say?
"Mine would, sir, were I human."
Oof. That hits hard.
This simple yet powerful statement forces Prospero to confront his own humanity, or perhaps the lack thereof, in his unrelenting pursuit of revenge. It's as if a mirror is held up by his spirit servant, asking him if he is less compassionate than a non-human entity.
This is a real gut check.
And it leads Prospero to a monumental realization, a statement that echoes through the ages. The rarer action is in virtue than in vengeance.
That's the core of it right there.
This is the precise moment he chooses forgiveness and reconciliation over continuing his pursuit of revenge. It's a powerful, almost agonizing shift from the initial justified desire for retribution that has driven him for 12 years. He sees a path not of continued suffering, but of healing.
And following this profound realization, Prospero makes an even more dramatic declaration. He renounces his magic.
What is it all up?
He declares, "I'll break my staff, bury it certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, I'll drown my book."
Getting rid of the tools of his power.
This isn't just about giving up his supernatural power. It's a deeply symbolic shedding of control, an embrace of human limitation, of mortality, and the unpredictable, messy world of mortal existence.
He's choosing to be human again.
It's a letting go, an acceptance of what it means to be fully human, unburdened by supernatural might. He gives up the very thing that defined his exile and enabled his return.
Which brings us to the grand reveal and the moments of profound forgiveness. Prospero, now in his ducal robes, his true identity restored, confronts the charmed nobles.
They're still under his spell, right?
Yes. The atmosphere must be electric, charged with anticipation and unspoken accusations. It's an incredibly powerful scene of confrontation and catharsis.
How does he handle it? Does he rub it in?
Not exactly. He begins by offering forgiveness to Alonso, the king of Naples, stating, "Thy dukedom I resign, and do entreat thou pardon me my wrongs." Then, to Antonio, his most wicked sir, his betraying brother.
What about him? Does he forgive him?
He declares, "I do forgive thy rankest fault, all of them." However, he still demands his dukedom back and pointedly calls Antonio unnatural.
So forgiveness, but with conditions. And a final judgment.
While he grants forgiveness, he doesn't completely absolve. It's not about forgetting. It's about choosing not to perpetuate the cycle of harm. It's a very human, perhaps even pragmatic form of forgiveness.
That makes sense. And then the reunion.
The emotional reunion of Alonso and Ferdinand is truly a moment of profound joy and relief, especially after Alonso believed his son was lost forever. You can practically hear the collective sigh from the audience.
Such a release of tension.
And then the symbolic revelation of Ferdinand and Miranda playing chess.
The game of strategy and partnership. Nice touch.
Signifying harmony and a hopeful future. And Miranda gets her iconic line here.
"Oh, brave new world."
That has such people in it. It captures the sense of wonder and possibility, though it's often read with a touch of dramatic irony. As the audience knows, this new world still contains treacherous and flawed individuals like Antonio.
Yeah, her innocence kind of highlights the flaws she doesn't see yet. And Gonzalo, the loyal advisor who helped Prospero and Miranda in their exile, reflects on the whole experience as nothing short of a miracle.
He ties it all together.
He observed that Claribel found a husband, even if unwillingly. Ferdinand found a wife. Prospero regained his dukedom, and everyone found themselves when no man was his own. A state of being utterly lost, adrift, yet ultimately rediscovered and brought to a new state of order.
It's a moment of profound relief and cosmic satisfaction, where justice seems to have been served and balance restored. So what becomes of everyone on this island, both the oppressors and the oppressed?
Good question. The wrap-up.
Prospero addresses Caliban, Stefano, and Trinculo, who are still bewildered by their drunken schemes and their stolen apparel.
Probably hungover too.
Likely. Caliban, for his part, shows a glimmer of remorse, a rare sign of self-awareness, saying, "I shall be pinched to death. I'll be wise hereafter."
Maybe there's hope for him. It suggests a possible path toward redemption and self-improvement, moving beyond his past treachery.
And perhaps most significantly, Ariel's fate.
Freedom. Finally.
Prospero grants Ariel his much-anticipated freedom, fulfilling his promise. He acknowledges his dainty Ariel and expresses that he shall miss thee as Ariel flies off to the elements as free as mountain winds.
That must be an emotional moment, a complex release.
It symbolizes not only Ariel's physical liberty, but also Prospero's own liberation from the burden of his magical power and the vengeance it once fueled.
A letting go for both of them.
The play then concludes with a plan for everyone to return to Naples, where Ferdinand and Miranda's nuptial will be solemnized, cementing the new order.
Back to civilization.
Prospero's ultimate plan, however, is to retire to Milan, where every third thought shall be my grave.
Wow, that's quite somber.
It signifies his acceptance of mortality, a profound letting go of earthly power and a quiet embrace of a more contemplative human existence. It's a deeply personal, almost melancholic farewell to the grand stage of his own life.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this whole journey of magic, power, and forgiveness leaves us with some incredibly enduring lessons and contemporary echoes.
Definitely. Let's talk about those.
Prospero's magic, as we've seen, is explicitly linked to his books and knowledge, making it a powerful instrument of power and control. His library wasn't just a collection of stories, it was the arsenal of his authority.
Knowledge is power, literally in his case.
And the play suggests that power will inevitably result in some form of resistance, much like Caliban's ongoing rebellion against Prospero's rule, or even Antonio's initial usurpation. It's a natural consequence when power is held unequally or unjustly.
Right. And it compels us to think deeply about the ethical use of power, from Prospero's initial manipulative use of his magic to trap his enemies, to his eventual profound renunciation of it.
He starts by wielding power to punish, but then transforms it into a tool for healing, reconciliation, and ultimately self-liberation. It makes you wonder, if you had absolute power, how would you wield it?
A question for the ages.
This leads directly into the timeless choice between reconciliation and revenge, which is at the very heart of the Tempest. Prospero's journey from seeking vengeance to choosing virtue reflects a universal human challenge.
How do we deal with being wronged?
Exactly. Confronting past wrongs and seeking redemption, rather than perpetuating cycles of harm. It's a powerful message for any era, a testament to the idea that true strength lies not in the ability to inflict pain, but to forgive it.
Absolutely. And let's revisit Caliban through that post-colonial lens again. Prospero's arrival clearly dispossesses Caliban of his own kingship over the island.
Caliban definitely sees Prospero as an intruder, a colonizer who has taken his birthright. This perspective frames Caliban not just as a monster, but as a victim of imperial conquest.
But it's complicated, as we discussed.
There's definitely a nuanced and vigorous debate here, and it's important to acknowledge both sides. Some argue that the situation is essentially three people on an island, initially, and not a true colonization in the modern, large-scale sense, pointing to the play's unique, almost fantastical setting.
Right, it's not exactly the historical colonization of the Americas or Africa.
However, others, like the Martinique-born poet and politician Aimé Césaire, highlight the colonial hypocrisy within the play, where the colonizer, Prospero, justifies his subjugation of the native, Caliban, through claims of civility and education while simultaneously exploiting him.
The civilizing mission argument.
Precisely. What's crucial to acknowledge is that while Caliban is undoubtedly oppressed by Prospero, his own actions, the attempted violation and offering Miranda as a prize, complicate his portrayal as a purely sympathetic victim. It's not a black and white narrative.
Shakespeare presents a character that challenges easy categorization, leaving us to grapple with the ambiguities. It certainly isn't simple.
And if we connect this to the female experience in the play, we can synthesize the analysis of Miranda, Sycorax, and Claribel. Their depictions powerfully reflect the patriarchal ideology and prevailing misogyny of Elizabethan England.
Women were often depicted as bawdy, emotional, naive, foul witch, and sometimes as a political commodity. They were rarely granted full agency or voice in their own destinies.
This raises an important question. How do these portrayals offer insight into historical attitudes towards women? Even with their clear marginalization, figures like Miranda still exert a surprising degree of agency within their constrained roles.
Like her bold declaration of love to Ferdinand.
Exactly, completely bypassing societal norms. Or how Sycorax, even in her demonized form, wielded immense power on the island before Prospero's arrival.
Well,
it shows that even within patriarchal structures, individual women found ways to exert influence or express their will.
they weren't just passive victims.
Not entirely. And then there's the beautiful, profound illusion of life and the power of art, a theme woven throughout the entire play. Prospero's famous line, uttered after the mask dissolves.
We are such stuff as dreams are made on.
And our little life is rounded with a sleep. It encapsulates the play's overall sense of magic, illusion, and theatricality. It makes you question the very nature of reality, reminding us how fleeting and dreamlike our existence can be.
It's almost meta-theatrical.
Indeed. Prospero as a character can even be seen as a powerful metaphor for Shakespeare the playwright himself.
The ultimate artist figure.
Orchestrating the entire play's events and characters, creating a world out of nothing but words and imagination, just as Prospero creates a world with his magic. The play suggests the immense power of art not just to create illusions, but to transform reality, to resolve conflict, and ultimately to lead to peace.
It's almost as if Shakespeare, in his twilight years as a playwright, is contemplating his own legacy and the profound, almost magical power of his craft to shape human understanding and experience.
That's a common reading, and it feels very fitting.
So, what does this all mean for us today? What are the enduring lessons from The Tempest that resonate across centuries?
Well, the themes of justice, redemption, and the ethics of power remain incredibly relevant. The play challenges us to consider the importance of compassion and the profound ability to forgive, even in the face of profound wrongs.
Something we still struggle with constantly.
Absolutely. Ultimately, The Tempest champions the enduring power of human connection, the universal pursuit of freedom, whether it's Ariel's physical liberty or Prospero's spiritual liberation, and the transformative healing power of letting go.
It's about finding peace, not through continued conflict, but through an enlightened choice of virtue over vengeance.
Beautifully put.
That's a great place to wrap up. So, to summarize our deep dive, The Tempest stands as one of Shakespeare's most enduring and contemplative works, powerfully exploring themes of forgiveness, the responsible use of power, the complex echoes of colonialism, and the transformative nature of art.
It really packs a lot into one play.
It's often seen, quite fittingly, as Shakespeare's profound farewell to the stage, a masterpiece about the wisdom found in letting go and finding peace.
It's a play that continues to resonate because its core questions about human nature, justice, mercy, and what it truly means to be free are timeless.
Okay, final thought then. As Prospero frees Ariel, breaks his staff, and drowns his book, he chooses to relinquish his magic for the messy, unpredictable, yet ultimately more profound world of human connection. So here's something to think about. What magic, what forms of control or deeply held grievances might we choose to lay down in our own lives to truly step into our own brave new world?